What happens when a comedian stops being funny and starts playing politics? That's the question hanging over the downfall of Jimmy Kimmel, a once beloved late-night host who turned his stage into something far different than comedy. His collapse wasn't just about jokes falling flat, it was about betrayal, obsession, ratings, and an industry that will drop anyone the second they stop making money. And it all began with a moment that nobody saw coming. Bill Burr, a comedian famous for his unfiltered honesty, sat across from Kimmel on stage. The crowd expected the usual safe banter, the tried and true routine of mocking Trump, and maybe a few easy laughs at the expense of conservatives. That's the bread and butter of late night these days. But Burr had other plans. Instead of following the script, he flipped it. He looked at Kimmel, smirked, and went straight for the jugular. He didn't play along. He didn't protect Kimmel. He mocked the very narrative that had become the backbone of Kimmel's show. In front of millions, Burr made Kimmel look exposed. Kimmel, who had built his career on having the upper hand, was suddenly the butt of the joke. The reaction was immediate. Burr got laughs, Kimmel got awkward silence. And the cameras caught everything. Kimmel's nervous fidgeting, his tugging at the suit jacket, his forced smiles. He tried to steer things back to safety to get Burr to join him in the usual routine, but Burr wasn't having it. Burr didn't just roast Kimmel, he roasted the entire premise of what late night had become. When your own friends start throwing you under the bus on live television, that's not just uncomfortable, it's a sign your power is slipping. But what Burr said next turned an awkward interview into something unforgettable. He pointed out that liberals themselves had made Trump into a larger-than-life figure. Every attempt to bring him down only made him stronger. The indictments, the constant headlines, the obsession for media and entertainers, it all backfired. Instead of burying Trump, they resurrected him. Burr compared it to a washed-up musician who suddenly got a second hit because critics kept demanding encores. The more they tried to silence him, the more they gave him attention. And Kimmel was right in the middle of it, one of the loudest voices amplifying Trump's name night after night. What was supposed to be comedy turned into a free advertising campaign. Burr wasn't a conservative, he wasn't a closet Republican, he admitted he leaned left. But that was what made the moment sting. When even someone on your side says the obsession is ridiculous, it lands harder. It forces the audience to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the constant attacks weren't helping. And Kimmel hated it. You could see it in his face. He wanted Burr to bash Trump, not expose the flaws of his own approach. But the truth had been spoken, and Kimmel couldn't laugh it off. That moment set the tone for what would become a slow, painful collapse. Behind the cameras, things were worse, ratings were falling. Late-night TV had already been losing ground to streaming platforms, YouTube, and podcasts, but Kimmel's numbers were sinking faster than most. Networks don't care about ideology, they care about profits. And advertisers were starting to disappear. The truth is that comedy wasn't the problem, lecturing was. Viewers were tired of hearing the same rants night after night. Half the country felt alienated, independents tuned out, even some on the left got bored. The show lost its energy, its spark, its entertainment value. It wasn't comedy anymore, it was commentary disguised as jokes. And in entertainment, once the laughs stop, the viewers stop showing up. The decline wasn't sudden, it was gradual. But every year, the numbers got worse. Once advertisers saw the trend, they started to back away. For Disney and ABC, Kimmel wasn't just unpopular, he was a liability. And when you're losing millions, the loyalty disappears quickly. That's when people started screaming about censorship. Supporters argued that Kimmel was being silenced. But that argument doesn't hold up. This wasn't about free speech. The First Amendment protects you from government censorship. It doesn't guarantee that a private company has to pay you tens of millions of dollars while your ratings tank. Networks aren't in the business of defending political ideology, they're in the business of making money. If you stop being profitable, you're done. That's not censorship, that's economics. Kimmel didn't lose his right to speak. He could still rant on a podcast, on YouTube, or on Substack like so many other media figures. What he lost was the massive paycheck that came with being on ABC. And that's the part his defenders didn't want to admit. The truth was simple. The market rejected him. But there was another twist, one that added insult to injury. Barack Obama, the same politician who had been silent during the peak of cancel culture, suddenly started criticizing it. For years, comedians, actors, and regular people were being torn apart online for stepping out of line. Obama never warned against it. He never defended free expression. But now, with the political tides turning, suddenly cancel culture was a problem. Suddenly, it was worth speaking out against. The timing was too perfect to ignore. It showed the hypocrisy of a system where leaders only oppose mob rule once it stops benefiting their side. For Kimmel, though, the shift came too late. The audience was already exhausted. His peers were mocking him. The network was out of patience. And then came the final straw. His monologues weren't just predictable, they were toxic. What once passed as edgy humor turned into bitter lectures. Even his defenders struggled to excuse some of his comments. The line between comedy and commentary blurred until it vanished, and when you lose that line, you lose the crowd. People don't tune in to be scolded. They don't stay for partisan preaching. They want to laugh. And when the laughs disappeared, so did the audience. Advertisers followed. Ratings plummeted further. And the network made its decision. The truth is, this wasn't about one bad moment or one edgy joke. It was years of choices stacking up. Kimmel traded his comedy brand for political activism. He leaned harder and harder into ideology, forgetting the golden rule of entertainment. Give the audience what they came for. They came for laughs. They didn't get them. And once they left, they weren't coming back. The fall of Jimmy Kimmel is a story bigger than one man's career. It's a warning to anyone in Hollywood who thinks they're untouchable. Networks don't care how famous you are. They don't care how many magazine covers you've been on. They don't care how loyal you've been to the political narrative of the moment. They care about numbers. If the numbers collapse, so do you. And that's exactly what happened. Burr's roast was more than a funny moment. It was a mirror, reflecting how far Kimmel had drifted from what made him popular. His downfall wasn't random, it was inevitable. Audiences vote with their time, they vote with their attention, and their message was clear. We don't want lectures, we want comedy. By the time the network pulled the plug, it was too late to turn things around. Kimmel had boxed himself into a corner. He alienated half the country, narrowed his appeal to a shrinking audience, and ignored the warning signs. He forgot the one thing that keeps entertainers alive, the ability to entertain. And once you lose that, you lose everything. His story is fascinating, not just because of the drama, but because of what it says about the future of entertainment. Audiences today have endless options. They can watch Netflix, stream YouTube, follow podcasts, or scroll TikTok. They don't have to sit through late-night lectures disguised as comedy. And when given the choice, they left. They left Kimmel, they left Colbert, they left the format itself, the power shifted, and entertainers who failed to adapt paid the price. For Kimmel, it wasn't just about one career ending, it was about the end of an era. The late-night host who once dominated headlines became irrelevant. His downfall wasn't the result of censorship or political conspiracies or network betrayal. It was the result of forgetting the basics. Comedy is supposed to be funny. Entertainment is supposed to entertain. When you stop delivering, the audience stops showing up. And once the audience leaves, the money leaves. And once the money leaves, Hollywood leaves too. That's the cold truth of the industry. Kimmel thought he was bigger than the system. He thought loyalty to a political narrative would protect him. But the system doesn't reward loyalty, it rewards profit. And when the profits dried up, so did his safety net. The laughs disappeared.
All of this screaming about the First Amendment and free speech is driving me crazy. People seem to think that the First Amendment allows every individual to say whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want. That's not what the First Amendment does. What the First Amendment does is provides that Congress can make no law to prohibit you from speaking. It does not say that you can't get fired for saying some stupid
the
stuff.
ratings tanked and the story was over. Bill Burr's roast wasn't just comedy, it was prophecy. It revealed what everyone else already knew but didn't want to say out loud. Jimmy Kimmel's time was running out, and when it finally ran out, there was nothing left to save him. His story isn't unique. It's the same story that plays out again and again in Hollywood. Stars rise, they forget what made them popular, they alienate the people who supported them, and then they fall. The industry moves on without them. because the industry doesn't care. It never has. And for Jimmy Kimmel, the lesson is harsh but clear. The audience is always in control. Once you lose them, you've lost everything. His downfall wasn't a tragedy, it was a warning. A warning to anyone who thinks they can trade laughs for lectures and still keep the crowd. The audience has spoken, and their message was clear. They want comedy, not commentary. They want laughter, not lectures. They want entertainment, not ideology.